Our story picks up in the morning. Ash is training on the beaches of Alola, outside Professor Kukui's house. He utilizes both his Alolan Pokemon, as well as some of his more recent captures. Goh, Chloe, and Kukui come up, watching Ash as he calls out all sorts of different attacks and gives commands to the 10 Pokemon out on the sandy beach. He only has a little more time before the battle is supposed to start. Preparations have already been made for the battle, and the event is practically sold out due to the people of Alola all wanting to see their champion in an official match. When Ash notices the three, he stops training for a moment and goes to talk to them. They talk about Ash's strategy, as while Kukui hasn't seen Rinto battle before, both Goh and Chloe know what he's capable of. Last they saw, Rinto's Gallade and Garchomp were both very capable fighters. And who knew what Rinto could use in the battle otherwise? His Roselia might even be a Roserade by now. Goh, seeing Ash's Alolan Pokemon in the training, asks if he plans to use them, but Ash says no. Looking at the 5 other Pokemon on the beach, Kleavor, Dragonite, Gengar, Lucario, and Galarian Darmanitan. Chloe asks why he chose them, to which Ash brings up the battle the two had in Orberg City. Alongside Pikachu, these were the Pokemon he had at the time. If any of his Pokemon deserved to beat Rinto, it was them. Especially Kleavor, who was still busy training with Lycanroc and Incineroar. Kukui looks at the Pokemon, very proud of them, and Ash. He then tells Ash he'll be rooting for him, as will the rest of his class. Ash smiles before going back to training. We cut to the Alola airport, where Rinto arrives. Confused, he pulls out a map trying to figure out where the stadium he's supposed to go to is. However, as he's looking, a voice from behind tells him that if he's looking for Manalo Stadium, he won't find it on the mainland. Turning around, Rinto is met by a large group of people. Asking who they are, they all explain they're Ash's friends, who spent time with him while he was in Alola. Seeing as Rinto is a friend of Ash's too, Professor Kukui thought they should go greet him and help him get to Manalo Stadium while Ash was still training. Rinto thanks them for this, but notices the looks he's getting from Kiawe and Gladion. Rinto states that those two don't seem to just want to help him get to the stadium, and both nod. Time passes quickly, and the final Masters 8 promotion match is about to take place. Manalo Stadium is packed with people from around the world, but most of which being Alolan residents. Even Ash's Alolan team were sitting with them in the stands, loudly cheering along for their trainer. Goh and Chloe are both a little intimidated by the turnout, as far more people than the amount from Battle Royale were there. However, both Professor Kukui and Burnett assure them it'll be alright. As soon as the battle starts, they won't even notice the crowd around them. As if on cue, the crowd falls silent, as the referee of the match flies up on his Aegislash in the center of the stadium. He welcomes everyone to this very special match, as today will decide this season's Masters 8. Will the current 8th ranked trainer keep their position, or will the challenger take it and advance to the Masters 8 tournament? The two are called out onto the battlefield, with the announcer detailing their feats. On one side, Ash Ketchum, Alola's champion hailing from Pallet Town in the Kanto region. On the other was Rinto, the ace trainer graduate from Rustboro City's Pokemon School, as well as a student of Kalos Elite Four member Wickstrom. Both trainers had rapidly gotten to the top of the World Championships, and each had many fans across the world because of this, who were now watching both in the stands, as well as at home via live broadcast the World Championships was providing themselves. Now, per the rules set by the defending trainer, the battle would be a full 6-on-6 single battle, in which they may use either a Z move or a Mega Evolution. Substitutions in the battle were allowed, and the battle would only end once either side's Pokemon were all completely out of commission. With that being said, the battle was allowed to begin. Ash and Rinto both send out their first Pokemon. With a happy cry, Dragonite appears from her ball, only to be met with her opponent giving the audience an aerial show, as Talonflame flies in a loop through the sky, before landing in front of Rinto. Ash looks pretty impressed by Rinto's Pokemon choice, recalling his own Talonflame briefly. He decides to start off with a Dragon Dance, however. This only helps Rinto, as he first sets up a Tailwind with Talonflame, and then uses U-Turn to pivot into Garchomp. Rinto then attempts to set the pace of the fight by using the Tailwind to rush in faster than Ash expected, in order to land a powerful dual chop against her. Dragonite takes the hit better than Rinto expected, as he planned in advance after seeing Ash's other battles with Dragonite, and taking note of her multi-scale ability. Still, the Tailwind makes his Garchomp much faster than her, so he chooses to keep up the hyper-offensive strategy. As Garchomp flies in for another dual chop, Ash calls for Dragonite to fly upwards. The two dragons soar high into the air, with Garchomp rapidly gaining on Dragonite. As Dual Chop is about to strike, Ash calls for Dragonite to spin while using Dragon Dance. This decreases the damage of the first hit. However, the second, Rinto calls for Garchomp to strike from above. The attack hammers down on Dragonite, messing with her flight slightly, and once again surprising Ash. Rinto reminds Ash that he used this strategy against Karina, which allowed him to study it and counter. Rinto then calls for Garchomp to dive in and strike with Outrage. Garchomp immediately strikes, catching Dragonite with a powerful hit that sends her straight to the ground. Dragonite only barely manages to get up and avoid the second hit, before countering with a dual wing beat. Garchomp attempts to block the hit, but the power behind Dragonite's attack being increased by Dragon Dance makes it much more difficult for the pseudo-legendary to properly prevent damage. Rinto calls for Earthquake, forcing Ash to have Dragonite take flight. But this was what Rinto was hoping for, as he has Garchomp ascend into the air for another Outrage. Countering quickly, Ash calls for Waterfall. The two attacks clash, with Dragonite just barely edging out. However, when Dragonite tries to put a spin to the attack, Garchomp pierces the head of the watery jet with its two claws, before breaking the move entirely. It then fires a Fire Blast at Dragonite, causing her to spiral through the air. Rinto smirks, before telling Ash that while Waterfall might have gotten him out of a tough situation with Richie, it wasn't going to save him here. Ash nods, remembering that the move also didn't help in another previous battle of his. However, that didn't mean he couldn't find a way around this. He briefly acknowledges Rinto's knowledgeability, before stating that he won't be backed into a corner that easily. Quickly, he commands that Dragonite fly around in Waterfall again. Rinto cockily states that using the same strategy won't work, and has Garchomp follow her. The two pseudos race through the air, going all across the stadium. As Garchomp gets close enough to strike with an Outrage, Ash calls for Dragonite to use her wings to separate from Waterfall. Dragonite stretches out her wings, and in a spinning motion, breaks out of the Waterfall, causing the jet to slam into Garchomp on its own. Rinto calls out to Garchomp, asking it to recover quickly. However, just as it is, Dragonite is already getting closer. The two both call for their Pokemon to attack, calling for Outrage and Fire Blast respectively. Garchomp starts to spew the powerful flames, but just as the attack strikes, Dragonite breaks through and strikes Garchomp. Garchomp loses consciousness and falls to the ground. Rinto chuckles, saying he expected Dragonite to do something unpredictable. While it worked out for her before, it wouldn't work again though. Ash thanks Paul under his breath, as while the fight wasn't against Cynthia's, he was still able to use their training to help Dragonite beat a powerful Garchomp. Rinto's next Pokemon out is Azumarill. Luckily, the tailwind has petered out, meaning Dragonite has the speed advantage. Ash asks Dragonite if she wants to keep going, to which she nods, however, flinching slightly as a wisp of flame appears unknowingly to Ash. The battle continues, and Rinto decides to play a little more defensively, choosing to have Azumarill zip around the battlefield while using Aqua Jet. Dragonite attempts to go after it, but her fight pattern keeps getting disrupted as she occasionally winces. It doesn't take much longer for Ash to figure out what's going on, but by then, the burn damage is taking too much of a toll, and Azumarill is able to swoop in with an Aqua Jet Play Rough combo in order to take the pseudo-legendary out of the fight. Ash calls Dragonite back, thanking her and apologizing for not realizing she was burned sooner. Pikachu is out on the field next, and Ash is already devising a plan. As Rinto continues to try and throw him off with Aqua Jet, Ash has Pikachu focus in on Azumarill's timing. Then, once Azumarill is about to go for an attack, Ash calls for Pikachu to use Iron Tail on the ground. Pikachu then stands up on his tail, planning to catch Azumarill, but Rinto calls for Ice Punch, which freezes the Aqua Jet just as it touches. The sudden added force due to it freezing over is just barely enough for Pikachu to be unable to stop the attack, knocking him away in the process. Rinto then chooses to keep it up by having Azumarill charge in with Liquidation. Thinking quickly, Ash counters with Iron Tail, before having Pikachu use Electro Web. The attack wraps around Azumarill, restricting its movements, and allowing Pikachu to get a clean hit off with Iron Tail. Rinto decides to change up his strategy here, calling Azumarill back in favor for Magnezone. Ash decides that to change his tactics as well, calling back Pikachu and bringing out Kleavor instead. Rinto is surprised to see Kleavor out already. He had been hearing rumors of Ash having a Pokemon that hadn't been seen in years, so he was excited to see how it would fare. Just as Kleavor is about to strike with close combat, Magnezone uses Magnet Res, breaking off some of the battlefield around it, including where Kleavor was just about to step. Kleavor is knocked back slightly, allowing Magnezone to strike with a Discharge. Kleavor charges in once again, attempting to strike Magnezone. However, the Magnet Pokemon uses the debris as a shield, defending itself from Kleavor's attacks, while also being given the opportunity to strike back with Discharge. After a few more attempts, Kleavor looks back at Ash briefly, and the two nod. Much to the surprise of everyone, Ash then chooses to switch out Kleavor for Darmanitan. Rinto especially didn't see why this happened, as he was expecting Kleavor to tough it out. Ash simply states that Kleavor wanted to save its strength for later. After all, there's another Pokemon of Rinto's that Kleavor wants to battle. Rinto shrugs, stating that it makes no difference as the broken pieces of the battlefield begin to revolve around Magnezone. Up in the stands, some of Ash's friends are unsure whether Ash will be able to get past this. They know he's gotten around tough situations before, but the Alola gang reveal they've seen just how strong Rinto is as well. This is when Kiawe and Gladion admit to having challenged Rinto to a battle, similar to how Kiawe tested Goh when they first met. He's a prodigy trainer, with a very analytical battle style. In so many ways, he was going to be a difficult match for Ash. Knowing Darmanitan wants to go all out from the very beginning, Ash immediately calls for Belly Drum. Darmanitan maxes out its attack, but Rinto questions whether this will actually help. He's seen Darmanitan succeed with this sort of strategy before, but while the risk and reward balance each other out, it will also result in Darmanitan being taken out sooner regardless. Still, he keeps on his toes, calling for Magnezone to use Iron Defense, just as Darmanitan approaches with a Flare Blitz. Darmanitan's fiery attack crashes through one of the pieces of debris that Magnezone was levitating around it. But Magnezone's boosted defenses are able to stop Magnezone from taking too much damage. Despite this, Darmanitan immediately goes into its Zen mode, and the fiery spirit it has bursts forth. Rinto chuckles before having Magnezone slam the rest of the pieces from the battlefield into Darmanitan. The Zen Charm Pokemon is knocked back before it immediately gets hit with a body press from Magnezone. Darmanitan tries to strike back with an Ice Punch, but it doesn't do nearly enough to get Magnezone away from it, as it fires off a discharge to damage the Galarian Pokemon even more. As Darmanitan goes for another Flare Blitz, Magnezone simply uses Iron Defense again in order to take the hit. It seems like Rinto has the upper hand in this moment, but while those in the audience are worried, they still notice the smiling face of Ash. He's already coming up with something. Rinto calls for another body press, but Ash tells Darmanitan to catch it just as Magnezone is about to strike. Darmanitan braces itself before managing to stop Magnezone despite the shorter length of its arms. Then, Ash tells Darmanitan to use Flare Blitz on itself. The flames of Darmanitan's Flare Blitz build up, enveloping it and Magnezone. It burns itself up a bit, but when the flames disappear, Magnezone falls. Rinto doesn't seem all too bothered by this, though, as he calls back Magnezone before sending out his Roserade. Ash immediately tells Darmanitan to be on guard, as he remembers Roserade from when he and Rinto first fought. Darmanitan readies itself, and just as Roserade gets in close, the Zen Charm Pokemon is able to land a powerful Ice Punch against it. However, through the pain, Roserade lifts up a bouquet to Darmanitan's face. Only needing 2 words of command, Roserade releases a sleep powder, lulling the fire-free Pokemon into a deep sleep. Rinto then takes advantage of this, working fast to set up as many spikes on the field as he can, before Ash manages to wake up Darmanitan. By that time, Rinto's short-term goal is already accomplished, and he switches out once again, bringing Talonflame back onto the field. Ash knows that Darmanitan won't be able to last much longer, but he also knows how Darmanitan fights. So as Rinto tells Talonflame to finish things up with a Flare Blitz, Ash calls out to Darmanitan, saying it's time to bust out their secret weapon. Darmanitan nods, before turning back with fire in its eyes. As Talonflame closes in, Darmanitan's body begins to glow with an orange aura. Then, a similarly colored aura appears within one of Darmanitan's fists. The sight of this catches Rinto off guard slightly, but he still has Talonflame charging at full power. Talonflame strikes, but it seals its own fate with this attack, as Ash calls for Darmanitan to use Reversal. Darmanitan punches Talonflame, the orange aura shooting through the fiery bird with such sheer power, the flames of Flare Blitz dissipate almost instantly. With that, both Pokemon fall. Silence fills the arena before the referee calls it as a double knockout. Both trainers return their Pokemon, and Rinto has to commend Darmanitan for that final hit. He had originally assumed that Darmanitan was going to use a last-ditch superpower attack. Ash chuckles, saying that Lucario helped Darmanitan learn this move earlier today. Darmanitan always takes a lot of damage in battle, so it felt like the perfect attack for him. A brief sense of relief falls over Ash's friends and Alolan family. They know, however, that this is really only the beginning. Ash was in the lead, but it still felt like he would be fighting an uphill battle. Rinto doesn't seem bothered by how many Pokemon he had lost in the battle, and each had put in some work against Ash and his team. For all they knew, Rinto could be toying with Ash. The battle continues, and Ash chooses to bring out Gengar, Unfortunately, the ghost type is damaged by the spikes on the ground. Then, to make matters worse, Rinto follows up with Gallade. Still, Gengar seems sure of itself that it can at least do something against Rinto's ace. So Ash decides they'll give it their all. Gengar's immediate strategy is, as usual, attempting to use its ghostly abilities in order to confuse Gallade. However, Rinto and his partner Pokemon are on guard the entire time. Whenever Gengar reappears in order to attack, Gallade is able to predict it and adapt accordingly. This only frustrates Gengar, as the more sly tactics can't get past Gallade. The Ghost attempts to strike with Sludge Wave, but Gallade cuts through with Psycho Cut, getting a powerful hit off against Gengar. Rinto then has Gallade follow it up with Stone Edge. However, Ash tells Gengar to use Dazzling Gleam to block the attack, and Gengar is just barely able to stop the attack from landing against him. Ash then tells Gengar to hide within the battlefield once more. Gallade is kept on guard, looking around and anticipating the moment Gengar will attack. Rinto stares alert as well, clearly thinking of where Gengar could appear from. Then, he seems to figure it out. He calls for Gallade to jump away and use Psycho Cut on the ground it was standing on. Just as Gallade does this, Gengar emerges, with Ash calling for a Will-O-Wisp. Gengar manages to launch the Wisps right before being struck with a powerful Psycho Cut. Gengar falls, but its attempts aren't in vain, as Gallade is burned in the process. However, now Ash has lost the lead that he had against Rinto. Next out is Pikachu. However, Rinto almost immediately swaps out Gallade for a Azumarill. In the stands, some of Ash's friends make comments on how Rinto is deliberately giving himself a disadvantage by choosing Azumarill, but some of the others aren't sure. As Kukui points out, Azumarill wasn't too badly damaged by its previous match with Pikachu and Ash. Also, with its huge power ability, Azumarill was doing a lot more damage than others of its species would. Pikachu was going to have his work cut out for him. The two Pokemon fight fiercely, with both using a strategy of speed, attempting to match the agility of each other as they zip around with Aqua Jet and Quick Attack. Ash manages to get the upper hand at one point, with a well-timed Electro Web from Pikachu. However, just before Pikachu can land an Iron Tail right after, Azumarill breaks free using Liquidation. Pikachu goes for Thunderbolt next, but Rinto whips out a new strategy, having Azumarill spin around while using Liquidation. The water of the attack spins around into multiple tendril-like shapes, deflecting Pikachu's attack. Ash is a little surprised by this, mentioning that this is a strategy of his, Counter Shield. Rinto mentions he learned from a battle with Fantina in Sinnoh. The Ghost Gym Leader had mentioned getting it from a previous gym challenger. What a coincidence that Ash was said challenger. Ash manages to work around the Counter Shield by having Pikachu use Electro Web on the ground, resulting in a nasty shock for Azumarill. Pikachu is then able to follow up with a Quick Attack boosted Iron Tail. For a while after that, it becomes a brutal beatdown between the two. They clash with Iron Tail and Liquidation, doing everything they can to just get some sort of edge against each other. However, eventually both Pokemon succumb to exhaustion, resulting in another tie. Both trainers only have 2 Pokemon left, and the crowd is excited to see who will win. After a bit of thinking, Ash and Rinto bring out Lucario and Roserade. Lucario takes damage from the spikes, but shrugs it off relatively quickly. Both Pokemon give a brief, knowing look to their trainers, and give a single nod, before rushing into battle. Roserade immediately attempts to go after Lucario with Sleep Powder, but then Lucario disappears. Multiple versions of the Aura Pokemon surrounding Roserade at the same time. Rinto smirks, before admitting how much of a problem Double Team is going to be. However, thinking quickly, he tells Roserade to spin and use Petal Dance. Roserade spreads the petals out quickly and efficiently, in a manner that feels like a coordinator's tactic. Petals cut through each of the clones, before colliding with the real Lucario. Lucario then uses Double Team once again, this time making 2 clones that launch it towards Roserade. The Bouquet Pokemon manages to avoid the Blaze Kick, before Lucario wheels around and strikes with another. Immediately, Roserade strikes with another Petal Dance, pushing Lucario back. However, after the second attack, Roserade becomes confused. Taking this as a moment of opportunity, Ash has Lucario strike with Meteor Mesh, before hitting off another Blaze Kick. Roserade snaps out of it, and Rinto calls for him to use Sludge Bomb. This confuses the audience, and Mallow rightfully points out that Sludge Bomb won't have any effect on Lucario, since it's a Steel type. However, Kiawe and Gladian both realize what Roserade might be doing. As the Sludge Bomb strikes Lucario in the eyes, the Aura Pokemon doubles back. Just as it can wipe away the poisonous attack, Roserade gets up close and uses Sleep Powder. On instinct, Lucario uses Double Team to create as many clones as it can, but it doesn't seem to help, as the Sleep Powder still puts Lucario to sleep. Much to Ash's surprise, Rinto proceeds to apologize for the underhanded tactic, stating that Wickstrom trained him better than that. Ash tells him not to worry about it though. Rinto's a little surprised by this, and then he realizes a fatal flaw. He calls for Roserade to dodge, and the Bouquet Pokemon is just barely able to avoid a Blaze Kick. Rinto once again has to commend Lucario for the strategy, as he allowed himself to get caught up in the fact that he thought his strategy worked. Ash chuckles, saying that he was lucky to have Lucario act as quickly as he did. However, Rinto notes that he'll have to get rid of these clones the same way he did before, immediately having Roserade use Petal Dance to get rid of as many as it can. Multiple Double Team clones are taken out in an instant, but one Lucario manages to evade the attack with the help of some of the other clones. Rinto immediately points out Lucario, and Roserade fires off another Petal Dance at it. This Lucario uses Meteor Mash over and over in order to fend off the attack. Unfortunately, the Petal Dance overwhelms Lucario. When the petals fade away, Lucario is gone. Confused murmurs begin to go around the audience. Not even the referee understands what happened. Did Lucario get blown away by the Petal Dance? The referee is about to call out that Lucario is unable to battle due to it no longer being in the stadium. But then something catches his eye. Something bright. It catches the eyes of the onlookers as well. Everyone looks up, except for Ash. In the sky, slowly descending, is Lucario. Raised above its head is a massive aura sphere, one that's almost the size of the entire stadium. This is when Rinto puts it together. He was never fighting the real Lucario. The Double Team was just a distraction. Some of the clones must have used all their might to launch the real Lucario as high as they could. Ash yells out for Lucario to use G-Max Aura Sphere, and the massive ball of energy is hurtled down towards the battlefield below. Rinto wants to call for Roserade to avoid the attack, but he knows there's no escape. The G-Max Aura Sphere crashes down, completely enveloping Roserade and most of the battlefield. The force of the attack can be felt throughout the entirety of Manalo Stadium, and even by some of the local aquatic life. When the dust settles, Roserade is completely and utterly defeated. Lucario lands back on the ground. However, the Aura Pokemon is noticeably exhausted. The audience can't help but applaud the Alola champion. Nothing like this has ever been seen before, and the announcer is sure that everyone witnessing this battle around the world will truly remember this fight for years to come. Rinto calls back Roserade, and is clearly both a mix of impressed and annoyed, and once again commends Lucario for how it fought in battle. He pulls out Gallade's Pokeball. He tells his partner that he's counting on him to bring them the victory, before sending the Blade Pokemon out onto the field. The Will-O-Wisp's burn shows to still be in effect, taking the first bit of damage from Gallade. Rinto decides not to waste any more time, choosing to Mega Evolve Gallade right off the bat, before the Mega Gallade rushes in with a close combat. Lucario immediately attempts to dodge, but it's too slow due to using so much energy against Roserade. Gallade lands the attack, and Lucario is immediately taken out. It's down to Kleavor. Ash sends the Axe Pokemon out, waiting to see what happens next. As soon as Kleavor comes out, a layer of spikes appear, damaging the bug. However, there aren't nearly as many. Ash lets out a sigh of relief, while everyone in the audience seems confused. Ash's friends are able to catch on quickly, though. Lucario's Aura Sphere wasn't supposed to take care of Roserade. It was also meant to destroy the spikes. Unfortunately, it seems some still stuck around, but it wasn't enough to damage Kleavor too badly. Kleavor and Gallade stare each other down. The two rivals, ever since the day when Ash and Rinto faced off in the Flute Cup competition. There's a moment of calm, before the two dash towards each other, immediately clashing blades. They strike each other evenly for a while, before Gallade gets the edge with Psycho Cut. Kleavor is pushed back a bit, before setting up Sword Stance. Rinto tries to disrupt Kleavor's attempts with Stone Edge, but just before the attack can land, Kleavor spins rapidly, slicing through the jagged stones. When Kleavor stops, he strikes a pose, similar to Ash's Incineroar after using a Darkest Lariat. Rinto calls for Gallade to rush in, but Ash thinks fast, having Kleavor pick up some of the remains of the Stone Edge and launch them at Gallade. The Blade Pokemon is able to dodge a few, but some land at its feet, tripping it up with their sharp edges. Rinto admits that Kleavor has gotten a lot stronger since the last time, to which Ash says that he has to thank his Alolan Pokemon for some of their new tricks. Gallade and Kleavor charge at each other. The two connect with close combat, once again matching each other blow for blow. Even with Kleavor's Sword Dance boost, Gallade is able to put up a fight, as if it wasn't even burned to begin with. Gallade leaps back, firing off a Psycho Cut. Kleavor spins rapidly, breaking through the attack with a Stone Axe. However, as soon as it stops, Kleavor ends up being struck with a Stone Edge, knocking it back. Kleavor digs its axes into the ground, stopping itself from losing any more ground. Then, once Gallade attempts to get in close, the Axe Pokemon strikes with a powerful X-Scissor. Gallade is sent to the ground, and immediately Rinto calls out to it, telling his partner to keep fighting. Slowly, Gallade gets back up onto its feet, wincing due to the burn damage. Rinto smiles as Gallade gets back into the fight. Gallade and Kleavor continue to clash. Ash is trying to find a way to wrap this up. Should he pull out his Z-move already? No. It might not be enough yet. However, Gallade was already doing a lot of damage to Kleavor, putting the Axe Pokemon on the back foot. Ash calls for X-Scissor. But just before using the super effective attack, Gallade uses Destiny Bond, without Rinto even needing to command it. The Hoenn trainer smiles, as the use of Destiny Bond forces Kleavor to hesitate on attacking. Rinto's Gallade keeps up this strategy, without saying a word. Kleavor is put up on the defensive, and Ash has to think quickly to come up with a strategy. The only thing Rinto says during this is that this was the power of his and Gallade's bond, a bond stronger than Ash has with any of his Pokemon. Meanwhile, the crowd is amazed, and the announcer exclaims how Rinto might actually defeat the Alola champion and take his spot as 8th strongest. However, something clicks in Ash's head. He's dealt with this sort of battle before. Back in Kalos, when facing off against Diantha and her Mega Gardevoir. This was just like that, with the only difficulty otherwise being Destiny Bond. Still, Ash had a feeling Rinto was just using that in order to keep Gallade safe, and taking as little damage as possible. If Destiny Bond were to actually activate, the battle would result in a draw, or in Rinto's defeat. Still, Ash didn't want to win on a technicality. He wanted to end this using the power of his bond with his Pokemon, and the power of Alola. He just had to find a way around Destiny Bond. Kleavor looks back at Ash, and the two come to a similar conclusion. The Hisuian bug gives Ash a nod, showing it still trusts Ash to make the right call here. Ash smiles, before telling Rinto to get ready, because this will be the deciding move. Kleavor lets out a proud and powerful battle cry, before Ash tells the Hisuian Pokemon to leap into the air. Kleavor launches itself with its axe arms, flying above Gallade. It reels back as if it were going to use Stone Edge. Rinto calls for Destiny Bond, but Ash cuts him off by telling Kleavor to use Sword Stance. Kleavor lands in front of Gallade, dodging backwards in a moment reminiscent of Rowlet's Feather Dance. It then raises its attack sharply, before Ash activates the Rockium Z. Performing the proper dance, Kleavor is imbued with the golden power of Alola, and Ash's friends can just feel the sensation that Ash's team and the Pokemon that fought beside him in this entire battle were all giving their power to Kleavor as well. Kleavor leaps into the air, rocks forming into a huge boulder above it. Rinto begins to panic slightly, losing the calm and calculated composure that he had held throughout the entire battle. Multiple thoughts are flowing through his head all at once as he tries to come up with a way to combat the Z move. He's been trying to analyze everything throughout the battle. He was sure he could make his way out of this one. However, in the heat of the moment, he makes a mistake, calling for Destiny Bond. Gallade tries the move, but it fails, having already been used just before this. It's too late for Rinto and Gallade to stop it, and Ash calls for Kleavor to end it with Continental Crush. The boulder crashes down on Gallade, and when it dissipates, Gallade has already reverted to base form, completely unconscious. The crowd roars, with none being louder than Ash's friends and Alolan Pokemon. Ash has claimed victory over his rival. Not only that, but Kleavor was able to defeat Gallade for itself. Ash goes over to shake hands with Rinto and thank him for the battle. But then he notices the look on Rinto's face. He looks helpless, trying to figure out what went wrong with the battle. Ash can tell Rinto's thoughts are moving at a mile a minute, and he tries to reach out, asking Rinto if he's alright. Rinto stops, then takes a deep breath. He apologizes for his behavior, both for that very moment and also for during the battle. He admits he made an oversight, and underestimated the bond between Ash and his Pokemon. He should have known better than that, after all this time of the two being rivals. The two shake hands, and Kleavor and Gallade cross blades once again, showing their respect for one another. Rinto then tells Ash he'll be coming back for the title of Strongest, and hopes to see Ash on the battlefield again. Ash smiles, giving his rival a nod. This is when the announcer draws their attention to the large monitor. With this being the final promotional match of the World Championships, It was time to reveal the competitors of the Masters 8 tournament, being held in a matter of days. Ranked 8th in the world, hailing from Pallet Town in the Kanto region, the Alolan champion Ash Ketchum. Ranked 7th was Univa's champion, the girl who knows the hearts of dragons, Iris. Ranked 6th in the world was the Lumiose Conference champion, Alon. Ranked 5th was the former Vermilion City gym leader, both a stone-cold businessman as well as the self-proclaimed strongest trainer, the final newcomer to the World Championships, Giovanni. Ranked 4th, the runner-up in the previous season, and the current champion of both Kanto and Johto, Lance. Ranked 3rd was the heir to the Devon Corporation, and current Hoenn champion, Steven Stone. Ranked 2nd was the previous world champion, a proud archaeologist and current Sinnoh champion, Cynthia. Finally, ranked number 1 in the entire world, and currently undefeated champion of both Galar and the world, Leon. The crowd cheers, hearing the names of all these powerful trainers, who would be going head-to-head in a matter of days. However, Ash's smile has faded, and his face has become one of terror. His eyes were transfixed on the image of rank number 5. That name, that man's face, he knew it all from before. Back in Johto, he tried to capture Mewtwo and the other clone Pokemon. And back in Unova, this was the man who took Meloetta and used it to summon Unova's forces of nature in order to control them for his own means. This man was none other than the leader of Team Rocket. What was he doing in the World Championships? We briefly cut to Team Rocket HQ, where Giovanni is staring at the files for the Mewtwo project. Matori, as well as a man with blue hair, are by his side, and remind him that the Masters 8 tournament will begin very shortly. Giovanni smiles, saying that everything is going according to plan. Thanks to their recovery of the Mewtwo project files, they were able to remember and track down Mewtwo. Now, with Mega Evolution as well, standing at the top of the Pokemon world wasn't going to be a problem. He then orders them to prepare all the grunts and executives. Once he proved himself as the strongest trainer, they would strike, starting from the most popular event in the entire world. He then addresses the blue-haired man, calling him Archer, and telling him that he had a special mission for him, and a select few. Archer nods, saying he'll do exactly as his boss wishes. The day draws to a close, and Ash and company say goodbye to Rinto, who says he's going back to Hoenn to do some more training. He says he'll be sure to get stronger and battle Ash again someday, while also telling Gladion and Kiawe that he hopes to see them in the next season of the World Championships. Ash gives his two Alolan rivals a confused look, before finding out about how the two battled Rinto in order to see just how strong he was. Rinto says goodbye, wishing Ash luck in the Masters 8 tournament. Ash's mind wanders back to the members of Masters 8, specifically Giovanni. What was the leader of Team Rocket planning? Kukui notices Ash's worried expression, and just tells Ash to cheer up, offering that Burnett could make him and his friends one of his favorite meals. This does cheer up Ash a bit, and so they end the day with a massive feast. The next morning, the trio get ready to go back to Kanto. All of Ash's Alolan friends and family show up to see the group off, with Kukui assuring Ash that they'll be watching in the Masters 8 tournament. Ash also asks if Kukui would be able to send his Alolan Pokemon if he needs them for a battle, to which Kukui says that if they're watching from home, then he'll be sure to send them whenever they're called upon. Go and Chloe are also in their own conversations, exchanging information with Sophocles and Lana respectively. Not too long after that, they're off on the plane, heading back to the Kanto region. Once they're back in their home region, they head over to Cerise's lab, only to find Professor Cerise chatting with someone Ash recognizes. The two turn, with the lady greeting her previous traveling companion. Confused, Go and Chloe ask who she is, to which Professor Cerise formally introduces Alexa to the two, stating she's a journalist from the Kalos region, who had come to the lab in order to make an article over the Cerise Park, and how it's like as a habitat for Pokemon. Alexa asks what brings Ash here, and she learns about how Ash and Go act as Professor Cerise's research assistants, giving the professor any information they find on Pokemon. Cerise even mentions that while they both have become much more busy with their own goals, what they've gained from those have been very beneficial to his own research as well. Alexa asks if the girl with them is also a research assistant, but Chloe shakes her head somewhat sheepishly. Cerise then explains Chloe is his daughter, and while she has joined Ash and Go on their adventures, she never officially became a research assistant. Alexa finds this interesting, and asks if the three would like to help her with her article. The three agree, and so Alexa is taken on a tour of Cerise Park. As they show her around, Ash and Go explain what they do in order to take care of the Pokemon here. Go takes pride in his knowledge over how the park works, quickly explaining detail after detail to her. When she has everything she needs, she then asks to interview each of them specifically, to get their input on how they personally feel about the area. Ash and Go both happily agree to, but Chloe on the other hand is a little unsure. None of her Pokemon live in Cerise Park. They only visit on occasion. However, Alexa says that's just fine, stating that Chloe could give an outsider perspective. Chloe gives a smile, and so they head back to the lab to begin the interviews. The interviews don't take too long, with Ash talking about how happy his Pokemon were while they stayed in Cerise Park, saying it was about as good as Professor Oak's ranch. Meanwhile, Go talked more on the analytical side of things. However, when Alexa gets to Chloe, they don't really exchange much at first. Alexa manages to get the ball rolling with a few questions, but certain ones that are more trainer-focused leave Chloe unable to answer. Soon, Alexa stops the interview, before asking Chloe if she's doing alright. Chloe nods, apologizing for not being much help. She's still new to being a trainer for the most part, and while she's been able to meet a lot of Pokemon, she still isn't sure what she wants to do as a trainer, or what it even means to be one. Alexa nods in understanding, before asking Chloe to tell her more about her own Pokemon. Chloe thinks for a moment, before talking about the 6 Pokemon she had caught while traveling with Ash and Go. She talks about how Oshawott was very playful, but tried to be serious in difficult situations, like when helping Calyrex. She talks about Ponyta, in the ways it likes its mane to be brushed, as well as how it ran really well alongside its mother back in Galar. She talks about Bulbasaur, and how it loved to use Sweet Scent. She talks about Shieldon, and how it always seemed to want to protect her and her friends, even though it was small. She talks about Yamper, telling stories about how when she was little and Yamper first joined her family. Then she gets to Eevee, and talks about all the adventures she had been able to go on because of the evolution Pokemon becoming her partner. Her battles against people like Lieutenant Surge in Team Galactic, her contest performance with May and Serena, She talks about it all. She talks about how Eevee's been trying to figure out what she wants to be, just like her. Chloe then says that she's glad to have met all of them, and how those 6 Pokemon helped her grow to love Pokemon. Alexa smiles, before telling Chloe that what she said was beautiful. She also compliments Chloe on how she told those stories. Chloe thanks her for the kind words, saying that her teacher at school had complimented her about the same things, to which Alexa says it's probably because she has a talent for it. Chloe seems a bit confused by this compliment, to which Alexa brings up Chloe's uncertainty about what she wants to do. Sometimes, the best way to decide is to find what you're passionate about, and have a talent for it. Chloe still isn't sure what Alexa's getting at. So the Closian journalist just says that if she figures out what she wants to do, to give her a call, handing Chloe her business card. Chloe thanks her, before asking if they should continue the interview. Alexa shakes her head, saying she thinks she has everything she needs now. After the group say goodbye to Alexa, Chloe decides to talk to her parents about it when she gets home. She talks with them about what Alexa said to her, but how she's not really sure what she means. Professor Cerise asks if she enjoys writing and telling stories. Chloe nods, saying that she's loved sharing what she's seen with Ash and Goh with her classmates. So Professor Cerise asks why she wouldn't want to continue doing that. This catches Chloe off guard, asking if she could really do that. Cerise chuckles, before saying that the main reason he became a professor was because he loved learning new things about Pokemon. And her mother, Talia, explains that she became an illustrator because of her love of drawing. Both of them only went down these paths because they were doing what they love. So why wouldn't she want to do the same? It's now that Chloe begins to understand. So she exclaims exactly that. She wants to keep traveling, and she wants to share her experiences with the whole world. She gives her parents a hug, before calling Alexa. When she explains to her what her new goal is, Alexa simply says that she knew she would figure it out sooner or later, before telling Chloe that if she wants to get some experience, then she could help her with another article she would be doing soon. Chloe asks what that is, to which Alexa says she has a press invite to the World Championships Masters 8 tournament. With the tournament being as big as it is, she could definitely use the extra help. Chloe agrees to help, stating she was already planning on watching it with Goh in order to cheer on Ash. So with that, the call ends. And Chloe ends her day, happy to have figured out what she wants to do. A few days pass, with Ash spending most of his time training as Pokemon. New members and old members all work together, each wanting to be in top shape before the Masters 8. So when it's finally time for the tournament, Ash heads to Wyndon Stadium, more determined than ever to win. On their way to the stadium, they run into a wild Galarian Farfetch. Interested in catching it, Goh sends out his Cubo, only for it to be quickly defeated in a single Leaf Blade. Seeing how strong the Galarian Farfetch seems to be, Ash decides to get a bit of a warm-up battle in, sending out Thwackey. The two Galarian Pokemon battle for a while, with Galarian Farfetch showing off many powerful moves, such as Knock Off to disarm Thwackey, as well as Steel Wing, Leaf Blade, and Brick Break. However, Thwackey is able to defeat Galarian Farfetch'd, allowing Ash and company to continue on to Wyndon Stadium, after dropping Galarian Farfetch'd off at the Pokemon Center. Our main trio, alongside Delia, Professor Oak, and Tracy, get twinned in the state. And soon they run into Hawk, who reveals himself to be Leon's younger brother. He and Ash end up having a battle, but like in canon, Ash's Pikachu easily defeats Hop's Wooloo. And Hop decides to join the group. First, they go to find Alexis so Chloe can assist her. However, when they find the Colosian journalist, they discover her talking to some familiar friends of Ash's. She's actually with Brock and Silent. Turns out, they had all run into each other, with Silent being the common factor who got the two introduced to each other. Brock and Silent, of course, both wanted to see Ash in the Masters 8, while Silent's saying he wanted to cheer on Iris as well. The group then decides it would be a great idea to sit together. Ash unfortunately has to split off from the group, heading to the locker rooms to join the others in Masters 8. He does meet Iris on the way, of course, with the two of them joining the others in order to get ready for the opening ceremony. Now, as for the others, well, while looking for seats, they run into the Alola gang, who are there as a field trip. And of course, to cheer on Ash. They all sit together, and like clockwork, more faces begin to join them. Misty, May, Max, Dawn, Serena, Clement, Bonnie. Everyone is here to watch the matches and cheer on Ash. There are many other familiar faces in the stands as well, like Sonia, Peony, and Peonia. Strangely enough, the Galarian Farfetch'd managed to get inside in order to watch as well. Soon the opening ceremony begins, though, with each member of the Masters 8 appearing. From Ash to Leon, one by one, they join with all their accomplishments being announced for each one. Ash looks around him, seeing the crowd filling the stadiums. However, then he sees Giovanni standing not too far away from him. The leader of Team Rocket, at this moment, seems like a mild-mannered businessman. But Ash knows otherwise. Ash knows something needs to be done. But what? After a brief message from Chairman Rose, the announcer talks about the rules. The Masters 8 tournament swaps rules every season in order to keep the top trainers on their toes. This year, the rules would be a full 6-on-6 battle in the singles category, and it would be in a round-robin style bracket, in which the 4 with the highest win rate would move on to the semifinals. With that being said, it was time to reveal the first round of battles. Ash versus Leon, Cynthia versus Iris, Steven versus Alon, and Lance versus Giovanni. Ash is immediately caught off guard by this. He's already facing Leon? He and Leon exchange a look, both smiling at each other. The other competitors also exchange looks with their respective opponents. Everyone is then told to go back to the locker rooms in order to prepare. However, suddenly there's a commotion, breaking through the cheers of the crowd. Everyone falls silent as a new person steps onto the pitch. Murmurs begin to stir, with many people not recognizing who this person is. But some do. The person calls out Ash's name, getting him to turn and be once again face to face with Bede. And that's where we'll be leaving things for right now. So what do you guys think? Did you enjoy Ash and Rinto's final battle? Were you surprised by who was in the Masters 8? Why do you think Bede has interrupted the opening ceremony? Let me know in the comments below. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye!